Hey guys, welcome to Lunch with Lindsay. I'm so excited you're here, and this time it's a little bit different because I'm coming to you from the road, from one of my favorite places, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, site of one of my favorite races, the Indy 500. So if you know a lot about racing, that's awesome because this episode is going to be for you. But if you don't, if you've never paid attention to it, that's all good too, because I promise, there are so many awesome lessons and things that are really relatable to hear from this conversation I'm about to tell you about. So, we just experienced the running of the Indy 500. It is easily the biggest race on the schedule for Indycar, and the winner of this year's race is Josef Newgarden. He drives for Penske. He won on his 12th attempt. Joseph is such an awesome guy. He does so many cool things, but he's just a really cool, inspiring fellow to be around, really. But everybody knows how big a deal this race is. So I was watching after he won that race, him and his wife Ashley and their little baby Coda, and I was glued to watching what they were doing. I had to have a conversation with them. So the day after the race, I found myself with an opportunity to sit down with Joseph and Ashley. She's also, by the way, a Disney princess. So I can't wait for you guys to hear this conversation about how one race changed his life, what they've experienced, themes of sacrifice, love, commitment, perseverance, and ultimately, really, belief. So sit back, enjoy this conversation. Joseph Newgarden and Ashley, thank you guys so much for being here. I know that this has been such a whirlwind for you, and I wanted to start just by asking if you guys could put into perspective what the Indy 500 really is, even for people who don't pay attention to racing, because honestly, a lot of people will watch this, I think, and know a lot about it. Some people don't, right?
Yeah.
So how do you sum up what this race in itself means to you?
Well, I love the history of the event. You know, for me, if you think about significant sporting events, there's not many that are over 100 years old. This was the 107th running in the Indy 500. It's even older than that. You know, there were some years off for the wars. But I love the significance of this singular event. This is the fabric and DNA of IndyCar racing. It is like the Kentucky Derby, if you will. It is our Super Bowl, and it's so difficult to win. You think about there's nearly 500,000 people here in one day that are concentrated together to watch this motor race, and to try and win that with all the pressure, you know, you just can't describe to people what that's like, and to be the driver in it, to hopefully win, it's magical.
You're shaking your head. Yeah, what is that?
Well, absolutely. It's just, I had no clue about the Indianapolis 500 or racing before we started dating, and then it came the first time, and I just looked around like, oh, I get it. You know, I get the pressure. It's palpable. The energy on the grid, it's such a big race, and you feel it. I can't imagine being a driver and feeling or the team to perform under all that pressure of the day of.
My first time, that's what I felt like. I felt it. It's like you feel it in your core. It's all the things. It's the rumbling of the flyover, and then. But when you guys fire up the cars, that was something I had never experienced in covering motorsports. Even was just like, whoa, this is right. It's like this is different. You talked about being a kid and watching the race here. What was that like?
I mean, for me, I said yesterday, and I really mean this. There's not a bad seat in this house. You know, whether you're sitting in turn 1 or turn 4, or you're a friend, or you're working on a car, or you're driving the car, they all matter. And so to have it from the perspective of just being a fan when I was younger and dreaming about maybe doing this one day, and it seems so sort of, you know, fantasy-like that they would never,
really?
ever have an opportunity to do that one day. You know, I couldn't imagine it. It was always crazy to me to watch this race on TV or watch it in person, and believe that drivers were able to do what they were doing with these cars around this track. And so to come full circle on it and to be in it now and have a chance to win and actually win it, I can't describe it to people. It's just very magical.
Yeah, Ashley, what's your take on that?
Because I just think of it more like Romans when they were in like these huge arenas and they're performing. I could just imagine it being like the most elite athletes, and you think of them as gods, and you look at them like, how, like, they're born like that. You know, you don't become that. So I could imagine as a little boy, you just think like, oh, they're a driver. Like, I don't know if I can become that, because they're just untouchable. And then for him to achieve that and become one of them, I couldn't imagine it. So surreal.
That's a good way to put it. That's a little how it feels.
You're like, wow, I can become it, and I did it.
So that's one of the things that I think a lot about. Why does sports make me cry? Right? Like, there are certain events, you mentioned it, the Derbies, Super Bowls, like, it's the storylines, right? But I've been thinking a lot about the fact that I think it's because in certain instances in sports, it's like we, like laymen watching, are given an opportunity to see someone's story and dream play out
Absolutely.
and come true. And there are examples of that, but I think maybe that's why it's so powerful. Like, I'm getting chills thinking about it because that was you, right? And
Yeah.
so I want to talk about the final lap because, first of all, Ashley, when that final lap was happening, what was happening for you? What was going through your mind?
It's weird. Yesterday, I think he said this in a couple of other interviews as well, but I think we were both like weirdly calm, and I just kept on thinking, if it's going to happen, then it's going to happen. And every time I would get kind of nervous on a red flag or whatever it was, I would just think, it's already written in history. So we're just like letting it play out. And the last lap, though, I lost my cool, and I'm just okay. At that point, I was hoping that he would win, of course, but I was also hoping he would not wreck.
Yeah.
So, because I knew him and I knew that he was going to wreck or he was going to win. So, which one? And
She's right on this day. I came in with the attitude that this was my 12th time running it. I didn't want to finish second, third, fourth. It didn't matter the position. It's a little bit cheesy, but really the only thing that does matter at Indianapolis is winning the race. If you don't win the race, you're leaving with a broken heart, and I've left here too many times with a broken heart, and I didn't want to do that again. So I wanted to do everything possible to try and win. I would risk the car at all costs to try and win the race. And so she's right. I had the mentality, I'm either winning the race or I'm not coming back.
And then what?
And then we won the race, which is pretty crazy. So, for me, it's hard when you're sitting in the car, and we went through the red flag scenarios where it came down to a last lap shootout. It's hard to not get emotional. Having been here for 11 years prior and not having ever won it, when you realize you're in a position to potentially win it, and it's at that very last critical moment, it's hard to not get emotional. You see the crowd, you see the energy. I mean, there's so many people here that are just cheering and willing you on that you have to recenter yourself and kind of focus on the job, because if you get too carried away in it, you're probably just going to make a mistake and not actually do what you need to do to win the race. And that's what happened to me. So I was like, okay, I'm going to focus on what I need to do right now to execute and hopefully win this thing.
And so then what happened?
And then when we went back out from the last red flag, we knew when we were leaving pit lane that we were going to come to the start-finish line, and it was one lap. And from that moment on, we knew whatever happened, that's going to decide the race. And we were in a great spot. Being in P2 was actually probably the perfect position for a one-lap shootout. And I didn't know where I was going to be able to pass Marcus in front of me. I didn't have the best run into turn one, and I actually thought that was good. When I saw him get away from me a little bit heading into the first corner, I thought, all right, I'm just going to work on getting him in off of turn two. I'll get him down the back straight, and hopefully that's enough. And that's what happened. I went as aggressive as I could, got by him on the back straight, and then just held him off to the line.
And what was the first thing that went through your mind, Ashley?
just relief. Honestly, I think I got so emotional because I keep on saying this, but it was right before the race, actually. Emma Dixon, Scott Dixon's wife, told me, she's like, when Scott won in 2008, she said, I felt like we cried for all the times that we didn't win. And that was like just the release of it.
Yeah.
And so that's truly how I felt. And it's not even about me. It was more about crying for him because I know how badly he wanted it, and all the times he was so heartbroken for months, and he came close, and he had a car that could win, and it didn't happen. It coulda, shoulda, woulda. It was just the relief that he can finally just. I mean, he's done it. You know, it's just.
And I love that it's also, so many people behind you, the team there alongside you. I loved watching you guys kiss the bricks, which is the tradition, of course, when you win this race. And I was like, that is so cool, that you're there hugging your crew chief, and you guys are, it's just like so cool to have it be such a team thing. But before that, you hopped through the hole in the fence, and we were all watching, and I know you've talked about it so many times, but we're like, what the hell is he doing, right? What did that feel like, climbing through that hole and getting out there?
It was amazing. I've always dreamed of winning this race, and I said, look, if I ever win this race, I'm going into the crowd.
Yeah.
Because I know how much energy is here in Indianapolis, and it's, that's why I tell people it's you can't describe what it feels like to be here. You have to see it in person. And I thought it would be the coolest thing ever to celebrate in the crowd that was there, that saw the finish. And so I knew exactly where that access point was. And I tried to get to the start-finish line.
How did you know where the access point was?
I'd been around here. You know, we stay here. We basically live here for 3 weeks, and so I've gone around the track.
You also had a little bird tell him how to.
Yeah,
A little bird tell him how to do it a couple years ago.
Yeah, there's one of my good buddies.
Were you the bird?
No. We have an inside bird.
My good buddy Brian Simpson. He's probably the only person that knew that I wanted to do that.
I love that.
And so yeah, we had scoped out a lot of the areas on the track, and he used to work for the series, and he told me where a good access point was. And you didn't even. I knew you didn't even have to necessarily open the gate. I could slip under a little access point underneath, and so I always dreamed of being able to do that. And any other race that I won, I was never going to go into the crowd because I said I want to leave that.
Because that's a little bit crazy.
It's a little crazy.
I mean, because they're your fans, it's just fans.
It's a little crazy, and I wanted to leave it for Indianapolis. If it was possible, I wanted to leave it for here. I quickly realized I needed to not go too far into the crowd.
Why? Because were they just?
It got a little nuts. In my head, I was thinking, I'll get into the crowd and I can go to the top of the top section. I want to go all the way to the top. And I got maybe 10% of the way there, and I couldn't go any further. There was too many people blocking me, and it was getting a little bit out of control. So I thought, it's probably a good idea to just head back to the racetrack at this point. But even just that first section that I was able to see was magical. That energy that I talk about, I was in the middle of it, and I can't describe it to you. It's just amazing the way people were feeling and
cool.
And just being a part of it.
The other thing that I was looking at, I was watching from the broadcast booth where my friend Alan was doing play-by-play, and I could see out the window as they were lifting your car up, which is one of the coolest things because they lift the entire race car up with your team and get you to Victory Circle. And I was watching as Ashley, you were coming in and you guys were taking pictures, and then when you had your son Coda, I was like, you guys, you have given him such a gift. Oh my God, I'm such a crier. Because I'm like, imagine that he's gonna be able to look back on this one day with you, and he won't remember per se being here, but you will always be able to tell him, and he will know, my dad won the Indy 500 when I was born, right? He wasn't even a year old. What was that like for you guys as a family?
It was very special. Very special to have everybody here, including Coda. And it is funny because I don't think he'll remember much of any of this. And but just to be able to share that moment together, and have him here was really a dream, but it's everybody. It's my mom, it's my dad, Ashley.
Such a family.
There's a lot of sacrifice that goes into a sport like this. You really, there's so much that has to be put on the line to even just get an opportunity to be here at this level. And so to have everybody there and come full circle, it was very fitting. I loved watching the episode of the show, the series 100 Days to Indy, and that they focused on you guys first in your house, right? That I thought about that because I thought the first thing you see in the shot is Coda walking towards the camera, and then they introduce you, Ashley, and I love the fact that you were a Disney princess and the way you guys met. But I also, in your press conference, when you got emotional talking about Ashley, what is it that you see from what Ashley does that is just so important to this? Well, I think that the sad thing is that Ashley carries the burden more than anybody of the heartbreak of this place. There's really, unfortunately, the way I work, there's no one that can help me in those moments. When I leave here and the race didn't work out, it just tears me apart. And, Ashley, I think the best way to put it is she's endured it. She has endured the challenge of trying to be at this level and, to maybe win this race and, to compete on the highest stage. And it's not easy, I
think it's just more like, even for his mom and his dad too, and me included, but we all just want to help him. And like you said, when he is heartbroken, you can't say you'll get him next year because you don't know. And he's very much a realist, and he might not get him next year. And you'll win it one day. You might not. And it's just, you can't. There's nothing that you can say, and that's the most painful thing as a parent or a spouse, because that's the person you love the most, and you want to help them, but you can't. So I think it's just.
And she really does. Like all she wants to do is help me, and she can't. And so it just makes it, it makes it so special to be able to realize the dream and the victory all these years later, after trying for so long.
How do you navigate that? Like I mean, I'm married with kids. How do you try to keep someone, like, how do you do that? Be there for him?
I think I've come to terms with the fact that this life is very not traditional, I would say. The wife is definitely the support, the family. That's my role, and that's the role I choose. But I'm in charge of the family, in charge of taking care of him and our son. But this is all consuming right now, and this isn't forever. This is 10, 15 more years of this, and he'll be retired.
If I'm lucky, if we're lucky.
Yes, and he'll retire if he's lucky, and we'll have our life then. But for right now, this is all consuming, and you have to dedicate that time, and you have to allow your partner to dedicate that time to those years when you have it, because it is so short-lived.
It is a sacrifice. There's, to some degree, you just can't compete at this level, and I think it's true with many sports that you have to sacrifice something in order to elevate yourself within a given craft, and that's the choice you have to make, and a family makes that choice too, which is, not always the easiest thing, but like Ashley said, it's hopefully not, it's typically not forever. It's a short-lived thing.
What are the types of things that you feel like you do have to sacrifice?
Well, I mean, it's time commitments is probably the hardest thing. With our sport, travel is a necessity. I don't get to choose what I can or can be at home for. At least not all the time. If I have to be at a race or I have to be at a commitment for one of our partners, a lot of times you have to be there for the obligation, and it's important.
This is the perfect example of this, was that when I was going to have our baby, his due date was April 18th, and we kept on saying, okay, well, there's a race right after this, and I think the race was 5 or 6 days after his due date, and so I'm like, okay, well, what if I go over the due date? Well, I can't miss the race. So if you go into labor and you have the baby and I'm at the race, he's like, of course I'll leave right after the race, but I can't be there. And that's such a sacrifice. But you go into it knowing that there's a chance that's going to happen. And then luckily that didn't happen.
Or even when we first had Coda, he was born April 17th. I essentially had to leave for a month after that. I was here for the entire time. I was there for next race, and then I had to be here for the entire month of May. And Ashley had to basically survive the beginning of parenthood without me. And so these are, things that most people don't plan to do when they start having kids, and it's just part of this strange world.
And to be clear, like, that's a sacrifice on both parts, because obviously we understand why that's difficult for you, but for you, I'm sure it doesn't feel great, that part of it, right? It's like anything you're missing, right?
Yeah,
and that's a big one, like, obviously.
It's not what you want, right?
Yeah.
Like
pulled in many directions probably.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be here, but I also, if you have a family, you want to be with your family. You don't want to miss any of these moments. So there's always going to be a balance to it, but it's not forever. I like that Ashley says that, because it's not intended to be forever like this.
No, it's not.
And you guys obviously have amazing communication, because that's what you probably have to have structure and such a set plan. Is that right?
Yes, very much so. Yeah,
Absolutely.
That's been a good thing for us. We're pretty aligned on everything that we do in life, which makes it more seamless.
So you should write a book now about that, because now that'd be great for other couples.
It's a lot easier than you say it.
No, and I mean,
still learning.
I do really quickly. If I could, I would love to hear a story of how you guys met, because I know you've told it before, but for people that haven't seen you describe it in the series, it's such a cool story.
It's a funny story. I mean,
He tells it so wrong.
Really?
Okay, well, you can correct me.
Right?
Go
ahead.
Okay. So we basically met at Disney World. We were there for my mother's birthday, and
on Christmas,
and we were having a dinner, and Ashley was working that night. She was Ariel, and we struck up a conversation. I was very interested in who Ariel was. Like I,
that was a character, so I'm a
not
princess,
because
I'm not gonna break
what
character.
drew you to Ariel?
Not because she was the character, but because of who she was. I was like, I don't know who this woman is, but I would love to meet her. And that's an impossible thing. You don't go to Disney World and you're not able to figure out exactly who these people are. Like this.
But what, was it like you saw Ariel across the room, or you were taught?
She was working.
You walk around and you meet people at different tables.
Yes. Oh yes, I love this. I know that. Yes.
And so we interacted, but I was in character, and so I was young. We were both like 21, and I remember being like, "Oh, he's cute," but I'm Ariel, and so I leave, and I'm like, "Well, that was fun."
We had a great
Anyway,
interaction.
we did have a great interaction.
Everyone at the table knew what was going on, and then I made the reservation for the family. So I left that night, and I'm like, I'm never going to find out who this person is. Like, it's just it's impossible to figure out who's working as Ariel.
Like, it would be so much easier if she wasn't in character.
Right,
You would have been able to,
totally.
right.
Yeah,
This is so funny.
So I like go back and I'm like trying to search, how do you find the employees of the
You Googled
Walt
that?
Disney Corporation? I'm like, an impossible task. You're never gonna.
He was Google imaging Ariel, and it's just popping up with cartoons, and he's like,
It just-
"Ah!"
You're like, no, that's not it.
Security protocols in place. Like
Time's running out.
Totally understand. And then literally that night, I get an email in my inbox, and it's from Ashley, signed as Ariel, and I'm like,
I had to sign the email as Ariel because he didn't know my name.
I'm like, how did she get my email? And I made the reservation for the dinner, so I assumed at the time that she looked for my email and emailed me, and I thought,
Yes,
this is
yes.
amazing. Lo and behold, it wasn't that. My father, who paid for the bill that night, he left my email on the check and told the waitress to please give this to Ariel. That's how she got my information. We
Oh.
met. My dad was my wingman. I didn't even know about it. And
know.
the rest is history.
He said that he watched Joseph and he knew he would regret not having reached out. Yeah, it was amazing.
Crazy.
And that was what.
And then she
11
moved.
years
She
ago?
moved. Ashley moved to Japan literally a month later for a year.
For you?
No,
No,
she was.
not
This
for
was
me.
already set. I
was
met
like,
her. I met her, and she was already like planning to leave the country for
Why
a year.
did you
Yeah.
move to Japan?
For Disney, they have a Tokyo
Yes.
Disneyland, and they hire out performers to play their princesses and princes. So I was already signed a contract. I was leaving in a month for Japan. I remember meeting him, and we went on our first date, and I'm like, I'm leaving. He's like,
Yeah, immediately
we'll
just
figure it out.
just a punch to the heart right away. She's like, I'm not even going to be here in the country. So then I had to travel to Japan to visit Ashley, which was really great. A
And
lot
you
of fun.
did?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I went.
multiple times, like 3 times.
Went very often, and yeah, here we are, 11 years later.
Yeah,
That is like storybook,
it's pretty cool.
late chapter in the book. Amazing, right? I mean,
Cool.
so if someone
And
had
then
told
he
you.
went to 500, and that's how the book ends.
Right, I know, I was
You
going to say
know?
ending, but then I was like, no, because there's more, of course. But do you think that if someone told you that this was going to happen, if someone told Ariel at that night, at that moment, what would you have told them?
Well, like, I don't mean to be.
Yeah.
There's like weird people that give you your phone numbers all the time and emails, and I was like,
At
it's so
Disney?
weird. Yeah, it's just like, because you're a princess, and they're just. But there
Just
was something
dropping
about
little
him that I was
information
just
here.
like, oh, I'm intrigued. And even though I was leaving for a month, or in a month, I was intrigued, and I knew that there was something different. And I mean, even when I left, we just had a understanding where we knew that our relationship was. It was going to be very hard to progress in that year because we were on such different time zones. He was so busy. It was like his second year in Indycar.
I was committed. I said, look, I'll wait.
And
I'll
so we
come
just kind
visit
of
you. I will
waited.
wait.
Truly, we kind of put everything on pause. Like, we still talked, he still visited, but we just put everything on pause and we just let it be what it was for that year. And then it was funny because when I moved back to the States, that's when it really felt like we started dating because we hadn't had that experience. So that's when I was getting to know him and getting to know what his foods he likes and, you know.
Yeah, we got to know each other a lot.
So
more
what's
than
his
that.
favorite food? Would you say?
Food.
No,
Just
but
any-
you know.
Sushi,
Yeah,
pizza,
yeah.
McDonald's.
Did you eat
Food.
sushi the
He
night
likes
before the
everything.
500?
Not this year. What
Okay.
did we? No, we had our partner dinner. So
He has surf and turf.
I had surf and turf. Yeah, that was what was on the menu. So
But he has that every year, so. I don't know.
yeah,
your day.
it's true. It's true.
I love it. Last thing for me, what would you say, I love to ask everyone I talk to this, is the toughest thing that you have overcome that makes you proud and when you reflect on it feels like something that you've really learned from?
That's a tough question. There's a lot of examples, I would say. You know, I think one thing that I'm very proud of is that my father instilled total belief in, you know, working hard and completely going for something, you know, and not letting anything pull you from your path. And I think racing is very demanding of that. You know, you have to fully commit yourself and survive in an intense environment that is constantly pulling at you and, you know, making you not crack under pressure. And I think just to be able to survive this world, and not just me, I think about everybody that helped make this survival possible. That for me is the most gratifying, you know, winning this race and being at this moment in my career. Of course, there's a lot of little things along the way, but I just think that really encapsulates everything for me.
Belief. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
I do. His dad is a man that nothing is impossible. Not one thing. Even if it sounds so out of this world, he will figure out a way to do it. And he's just crafty and thrifty. I don't know what you want to call him, but he's just a dreamer. And I think that he instilled, I mean, that's truly why he is where he is today, is because his dad dreamed of it so much for him when he was little, and he wanted to help Joseph achieve his dream, and nothing was impossible. Of course you want to be a race car driver, you can do it. And I think he's taken that even in the professional series, with the 500, with signing with Team Penske, with anything. It's just, nothing's impossible. We just have to figure out, there's a path that leads there, and we just have to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Oh my gosh. It is a storybook ending for now, right? Thank you
For
guys
now.
so much.
I like
well,
that.
meaning that there's more to come. That's
I like
why.
it. No,
you know
I
what
like
I mean?
it,
It's
yeah.
like, because if you say ending, it's not, you guys are, you're still a puppy. You're young.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm kidding.
I love that though.
No, Joseph, Ashley, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congrats. Oh my goodness, I loved that conversation so much, especially because everybody says if you win the Indy 500, your life truly changes in that moment, and that happens. There's no question. It's all about, you know, the relief coming off of your shoulders because you've wanted it so badly, and that's what Joseph told me afterwards. But the story of how he and his wife met, and also his tentpole theme of belief, I just think that's something that all of us can learn from, right? Anyway, thank you so much for listening to this conversation. Again, you can get this anywhere you get your podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. And I will see you next time from one of my favorite places, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I'm Lindsay, saying I'll see you later.